First of all, what is it?
Well, anchoring is a name for something that happens to us all the time. Think about you've walked past somebody and they've got a perfume on, and that immediately takes you back to an ex-girlfriend or your mum or someone that has worn that perfume, and you immediately go back there. Or if you've smelt bread cooking and you go back to your grandma cooking bread 20, 30, 40 years ago. It's an anchor is something that immediately takes you back to a past emotion or thought or feeling. So that's all it is.
So, and I get that because, you know, on a personal level, you're right. If you smell something, you smell cooking, or you're right, particularly you smell a perfume, it takes you back to a certain time. And I smell cooking and it takes me back to my mum's cooking, or, and I think of, but interestingly, does it work in reverse? So for example, if I think of my mum's cooking, can I smell it?
You probably could. If you.
That's a bit out of left field, I realise.
No, it is, but it's true because, again, the thought process can bring up the sensory acuity, can bring up the sensation of the memory. The memory can then prompt the smell. Yeah. Again, we can probably think about a smell we don't like when the dog's sitting in the kitchen with you.
Yeah. 100% takes you back. Hey, so anchoring is really about simply taking us back to a certain point in time, or to a certain position,
or emotion, or a feeling.
Or an emotion or a feeling. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a place, but it can be a feeling. It can be an emotion that you experience that you link with that smell, for example.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I want to talk about how we use it. But before we talk about how we use it, let's talk about what are some of the anchors, because you've just mentioned, say, smell, for example, in terms of cooking or a perfume, but smell isn't the only anchor, is it?
No. Smell is probably one of the strongest and one of the most instant anchors, though the more common ones are a sense of touch, or a sound, or a sight, or someone might say, and I apologize to any arachnophobes, but my daughter, if you even mention a spider, she freaks out, she goes into a cold sweat. And yet she knows consciously that a huntsman won't hurt her. But to see one, she almost panics because she's got an anchor to the side of a spider that when she was a little girl probably scared the crap out of her. And now she's got this immediate fear response. So that's the sight. It could be that someone says something to you in a particular way, and you've got, and unfortunately I'm talking about negative anchors here at the moment because they're the ones that happen to us mostly unconsciously. Someone might say something in a particular way, and all of a sudden you feel your blood start to boil, or you feel a sense of tension or anxiety. And they've not done anything wrong. So it can be sight, it can be a smell, it can be a sound, it can be a taste. Olfactory is also a very strong sense of, very strong anchor. So, there's a lot of them.
And so, Graham, one of the things that I saw Stuart Wilde do when I saw Stuart on stage is he would anchor an emotion to a story to a particular place on the stage. So he would give a very emotional story that would make you it would actually hit you here. But every time he wanted to repeat that story, which was linked to a sale, he would go back to that same position on the stage. And it was really interesting because when you'd watch him walk back to that position on the stage, you'd almost start to feel the emotion even before the story had came. So it's actually a really, really powerful tool.
Oh, yeah. It's powerful in business and sales.
So, okay. So cool. Having said that, how do we use anchoring? How do we use anchoring in business and sales? What are some obviously ethical ways that we can use anchoring?
Okay. So disclaimer time, I suppose. NLP is such a powerful technology that you can use it for good or evil. If we think of Jordan Belfort, Jordan didn't use it for good. He used it to make money, but not the right way. He has since learned his lessons, I believe. So taking from that, how can we use it ethically in business? Well, it might be that, like the gentleman you're just talking about, that you just allow people to have that sense of good feeling so that you can direct them to a place you want them to go. In sales, I personally believe that if I have a product that I believe in, that I know will help someone, it's my moral obligation to help them see that. And if I don't do that, then I'm not doing the job. So if I can use the anchor, and it might be a phrase or a touch or a smell or any one of the other sensations, if I can help you get to that point, then I'm actually doing my job. It's a bit broad of a question to nut it down to one particular thing yet, but yeah, it's our job to do what we can to help a client get the best outcome for themselves.
So, for example, if we can anchor or could we anchor, say, a positive story or a positive experience in a sales process, so that if we anchor an emotion attached to that positive story, that when we're looking to sort of close a sale, that we bring it back to the emotion that comes out of that positive story. That makes sense then?
Absolutely. If you anchored a name, like say Mary Beth and Mary Beth's success, and it's getting a little bit more complex, but if we had an open loop and the brain searches to close a loop. So if I say to you, for instance, and we won't get too sidetracked, but if I say to you, look, I'm going to tell you 3 things that are going to make you a lot of money. 1.
Right.
You're waiting for the next, you're waiting to close that loop. You're waiting for the end. So if we tell a story in a sales process and we anchor Mary Beth's name to the outcome you're looking for, all we need to do, and as long as we do that properly, when we get to the end, when we get towards the sale, the close, in a traditional ABC, then all we need to do is mention Mary Beth, and your name's going to come back. Sorry, her name is going to come back, and your emotions are going to come back to the positive feeling, the positive outcome that Mary Beth got, and therefore you will then experience that positive feeling in the sales process and be more likely to buy the product.
Yep, 100%. Just in case you don't know, guys, ABC is always be closing. So it's that's right. It's always be closing, which is a great sales term. And I think it was The Boiler Room. Was it The Boiler Room? That was the movie that. It was one of those movies with Ben Affleck anyway, which was ABC. It wasn't
been around a long time.
Yeah. But yeah, so the content will always be closing. Hey, mate, the thing about using anchors, Caroline's just made a good point. So associating music with a sale. Mm-hmm. You and I were talking about this the other day. And one of the things that I've seen work, say, for example, in real estate, you're talking about, olfactory things, is you go to an open home and they're brewing coffee. Or they're baking cookies in the oven. Mm-hmm. That's anchoring, isn't it?
It is. One of the common ones, as you said, is to have some biscuits in the oven, or have the smell of onions cooking. So have a barbie. The reason people do barbies at open houses, or not probably so much anymore, is the sense of the onions cooking, or the sense of the biscuits cooking, takes you back to that homely feeling where you're comfortable. If you're cooking biscuits at home, unless you're a commercial baker and you hate your job, then it probably has a good feeling. Yep. If you're at a barbie, most people have a sense of relaxation and good times with the barbecue. So the sense of smell for the onions brings you back to, this is comfortable. This is something that I enjoy. Therefore, the house is suddenly more comfortable, and you feel better about the potential purchase.
Yeah, 100%. So, mate, let's put it into some practical terms. And then I want to come back to the anchoring and the story about arachnophobia for a second. But in practical terms, so if most of my members are running premises, running an office, then Glengarry, 100%, Glen Ross, Glengarry, Glen Ross, you're 100% right, Robert. Well done. Awesome. That's where the scene of ABC comes from. Great movie. If you're running an office, so there's actually value, for example, in brewing coffee in the office. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If you're doing a sale across the desk from someone, what are a couple, or even just one simple anchoring tool that you might use in an across the desk sales environment? And I know I've sort of put that onto you without notice. So
that's right. You obviously have one up your sleeve. So an anchor for across the desk. Well, I'd probably not do it across the desk. If we're talking about the way the interaction, I'd probably move from being opposite to side by side, so more of the diagonal, so one corner, because the anchor for across the desk is often a negative one. In school, you had to go and sit in front of the headmaster, and that was always a troubling experience. Well, for me it was.
I was going to add that in, but
Yes, I have reformed. So the anchor there could be a negative one if you're sitting across the desk.
Yep.
You know, it's almost slave and master situation with the big chair at the back of the desk and the other person powering, hoping to get what they want. It again, at our age, Mark, we used to have to go and see the bank manager. It doesn't happen so much anymore.
Yeah.
But the bank manager would decide your fate.
Yeah.
So I would actually go on the corner of the desk or sit side by side and get out of that situation so there are no negative anchors there.
Yeah. And of course, bank managers always sat on a much higher chair in those days as well. So just because the thing is, let's go back to what you said before about ABC always be closing. So in that concept, we're talking about the fact that really all conversations are sales conversations of some form or another. So in fact, if you've got a success story, or if you've got, as you said, somebody's name or a product or an outcome or something special about what you do, and you can anchor the success that other people have had by using that product or that service, and you keep weaving the name of that product into the conversation, you're anchoring the person back. So for example, let's say I'm talking to you about Mastermind, and I tell you the story about, hey, listen, we've worked with this person who's had the best year they've ever had in 15 years in business through the things that we helped them in Mastermind. And I kept mentioning Mastermind in that conversation. If I was then to seed Mastermind through the rest of the conversation, that would be essentially be an anchor, would it not?
It could be, absolutely. And in fact, think about Mastermind. Michael Yardney, I believe, is a client of Mastermind.
Yeah.
Michael learns as much as everybody else. Michael learns when he presents. Michael learns when he listens. We all learn. So having Michael as a client is actually an anchor for Mastermind, because I think Michael might have a couple of dollars more than I have, just a couple. Yeah. And he's been a little bit more successful in business than I. So I look at Michael and think, okay, if Michael can learn from Mark, I think I've known you longer than Michael, so I have a win. But if Michael can learn from Mark, then maybe Mark's a good bloke to listen to. Therefore, that is an anchor in the professionalism that Mark provides. So if you tell a story about Michael, that then is an anchor. If you tell a story about someone having 15 more success this year after working with you than the last 15, that is an anchor. Absolutely. And that's why they pay celebrities a lot of money to endorse a product, because the success of the celebrity is then anchored onto, or is the anchor for, the product.
100%. If Snoop Dogg orders his food off Menulog, then Menulog must be the service that I have to use because Snoop Dogg's so successful.
Absolutely.
Yeah, makes sense. So guys, that's kind of, simple processes of anchoring.